What's up YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're going to be taking a look at every new deck from Chilling Reign. I've tried to make this video as all-inclusive as possible, but if I missed any of your favorite decks that you'd like to see covered, please leave it in the comments down below. We'll be taking a look at deck lists mostly from Japanese tournament results on hohonews.com, but I've also made a couple of my own decks to show off today using the pokegear.app website from decks that I couldn't really find lists that I was happy with on Ho-Ho News, so I made some of my own as well. Before we hop in and start looking at all of these brand new decks, shout out to potownstore.com, the best place for you to get PTCGO codes, and be sure to use code CELIO for 5% off. This is the list of decks we'll be taking a look at today, and over on the bottom right you'll see I have the low, mid, and high potential ratings, which I will be giving each deck list that we look at. Most of the lists in this video are from tournament results in Japan via hohonews.com, and keep in mind that Japan's format at the time of these tournaments that I'm taking these deck lists from was slightly different than our Team Up Through Chilling Reign format will be, since their rotation does not include some key cards like Jirachi with Stellar Wish and Tapu Koko Prism Star, but 99% of the format will be the same. Starting off, we have Blaziken VMAX Zaraora V. Blaziken VMAX is a brand new VMAX Pokemon with the Rapid Strike tag, so it benefits from things like Rapid Strike energy. Its main attack is Max Blaze that does 130 damage for 2 colorless energy, and you attach an energy from your discard pile to each of up to 2 of your benched Rapid Strike Pokemon. Now, that does not say basic energy, so you can attach Rapid Strike energy and the new special Rapid Strike energy that provides a rainbow energy. So Blaziken VMAX is not doing a ton of damage, but it provides a great utility in getting a little bit of chip damage in, attacking with a Rapid Strike Pokemon as a requirement for Zaraora V's attack, which we'll get to, and it also powers up 2 separate Rapid Strike Pokemon, possibly with special energy. Now, Zaraora V, a Lightning Rapid Strike Pokemon that's a basic, has one attack, Cross Fist, for Lightning Colorless, which means a Lightning energy plus a double Rapid Strike energy will suffice for this attack. It does 100 to the active, but if any of your other Rapid Strike Pokemon used an attack during your last turn, this attack also does 160 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. With things like the new Pissimian that buffs up your Rapid Strike bench damage to V and GX, and Telescopic Sight that buffs up all bench damage to V and GX, this could actually do 220 to a benched Pokemon, which would be enough to knock out most basic V Pokemon. So this combo is pretty cool. I think it's kind of an obvious combo. I think it's fairly strong, but Blaziken VMAX will typically be your early attacker, and it doesn't have a lot of damage output. So while this deck will probably be strategic and versatile, it doesn't have that aggression that other decks in the standard format do have. Here we'll look at a list from Ho-Ho News, and you'll see some of the key cards here being the 3/3 line of Blaziken VMAX, the 3 Zaraora, the Octillery that can search out any Rapid Strike energy, and you'll see double Rapid Strike energy and also the new Rapid Strike energy that provides 1 rainbow energy and also prevents your Rapid Strike Pokemon from being paralyzed. Now, this build does not have Koko Prism in it. Like I mentioned, Koko Prism is not in Japan's standard format, and I rate this with mid potential. I don't think it has everything that you need in a very, very, very good deck right now for standard. Possibly post-rotation that will be different. But I think it's pretty solid. I don't expect it to be one of the top 3 decks, but I also think it will be pretty good and see some play in tournaments. The next one, Blaziken Zaraora Inteleon, just a slight variation off of that last one we looked at. This one is using the Inteleon line as opposed to the thicker Octillery line. Still playing the 1/1 Octillery though. So that new Sobble for a colorless energy can search your deck for up to 3 basic Rapid Strike Pokemon and bench them. So that could be really good. And then the Drizzle, of course, from Sword and Shield, when you evolve, searches your deck for any trainer card. And the Inteleon from Sword and Shield, when you evolve, searches your deck for any 2 trainer cards. And then the new Inteleon from Chilling Reign, once a turn, allows you to put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And you'll also notice this deck is playing Path to the Peak, which shuts off all rule box abilities. And this deck's only playing one rule box ability, which is Crobat V. Next, we've got Blissey V Variants. Now, Blissey V is a pretty exciting card. Its ability Natural Cure. When you attach an energy from your hand to this Pokemon, heal all special conditions from it. That's fine. That's good to have. But Happy Blast, I think, actually has some great potential. For a colorless energy, it does 10 damage plus, and it does 30 more damage for each energy card attached to this Pokemon. Then you may attach up to 3 energy cards from your discard pile to this Pokemon. So that means you can do 100 if you have 3 energy already, and then attach 3 more, so you're doing 190 next turn, maybe 220 if you attach again to it, depending on if you can accelerate more energy during your turn, possibly even more damage. So Blissey V, I think this attack has the potential to be really powerful. Possibly not in the standard format it's coming into, but maybe in post-rotation it could be even stronger because there will be less aggression because the tag teams will be gone. So here we have a Blissey V Hapu variant from Japan, and the only Pokemon in this deck is Blissey V. It's really quite an interesting build that I certainly didn't think of myself. Kind of almost like a greens build, but you can't play greens because your only Pokemon has an ability. They do have an odd split of toughness cape and buff padding, which should just be for toughness cape. But Hapu's pretty cool in this deck because it allows you to look at the top 6 cards, choose 2 of them to go to your hand, and then 4 to go to the discard pile. You could choose 4 special energy and then use Blissey's attack to power it up onto there. And it's also using Hyper Potion, which allows you to discard 2 energy from a Pokemon and then heal 120 damage from it. So using that to help Blissey V tank. And you could probably also fit Malolana into this kind of deck as well. But this person fit Crushing Hammers in its place most likely. Blissey V Porygon Z is kind of an obvious way to build Blissey V, I think, since Porygon Z, it's a stage 2 Pokemon, but its ability allows you to attach as many special energy a turn as you like to your Pokemon. So you can get a lot of energy down to Blissey V and even recycle those energies with Blissey V's attack. And with Toughness Cape, Blissey V has 300 HP, so hopefully it will be surviving a hit. The next variant here is Blissey V with Cramorant VMAX, also using the Porygon Z to attach as many special energy as you want a turn, so maybe it's not all that different from the last one, but this one's running a 3-2 line of Cramorant VMAX, which for each energy attached, you flip a coin, and then it does 80 for each heads. So Cramorant VMAX can also do a lot of damage, but of course it's on a coin flip. Doing more than Blissey V if you flip all heads, but it depends on how lucky you're feeling with Cramorant VMAX. Next we have Galarian Slowking VMAX. Galarian Slowking VMAX has the Dark Colorless Max Blight attack to do 10 damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. Put 12 damage counters instead of 1 on that Pokemon between turns. So you automatically do 130 damage, the 10 plus 12 damage counters. If you have a single strike energy, that's 150 damage. If you have 2 single strike energies, that's 170. If you hit 170 twice, that's going to knock out every VMAX Pokemon without additional buffs like Big Charm and whatnot. That being said, I think single strike Galarian Slowking VMAX, that's a mouthful, is pretty underwhelming, but we do have a pretty neat deck list to look at for it, and Galarian Slowking V, I should also note, has the Spell of Ruin attack for Dark Colorless. At the end of your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon will be knocked out. And the deck we'll look at here does have Memory Charm in it, so you can use Slowking V's attack while you have Slowking VMAX evolve to use that Spell of Ruin if you can get a Pokemon stuck out there in the active. So this deck has a 4-2 line of Galarian Slowking VMAX, so you can see it's almost focusing a little bit on Galarian Slowking V's attack. Playing a thin line of Houndoom to accelerate single strike energy when needed, and also a pretty nice line 3-3 of Cinccino to draw through your deck. It has Memory Capsule, it has Cheryl, it has Galar Mine. It's almost built like a bit of a control deck. I do think this deck's pretty cool. I think it's definitely unique and different. That being said, I don't expect it to be anything amazing. It seems like it can be played around or teched for or prepared for pretty easily, but I do think it's very cool and definitely wanted to share it with you all. That being said, I do think it's low potential. I also wanted to note that I did rate all the Blissey decks low potential across the board just because I think there's a lot of aggression in the current standard format, and some of the lists are using Porygon Z, which is a stage 2, but I think Blissey V has a lot of potential to go. It's, you know, it's a brand new card. It has years to try to prove its worth in standard format. Next is Green's Trevenant Dusknoir. Now, this could be a deck prior to Chilling Reign, and I've seen people try to make it work. But Cresselia really wraps the bow on this archetype, so I am considering it a new archetype, at least competitively. So Trevenant Dusknoir, the Night Watch attack is going to be your main attack, 3 Psychic for 150, and you shuffle 2 random cards from your opponent's hand into their deck. Now, Cresselia is basically like Volcanion from Unbroken Bonds, so imagine playing Green's Reshizard without Volcanion. It doesn't sound great. So that's why I kind of think this should be considered kind of a new deck, since Cresselia is a main part of it with the Crescent Grow attack. Crescent Grow, but it might be Crescent Glow. I'd have to look at the English version, but a lot of these cards I had to use Japanese scans for. So for a Psychic Energy, search your deck for a Psychic Energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon. If it's your first turn going second, search and attach up to 3 Psychic Energies to one of your Pokemon instead. And then the Photon Laser does a little bit of damage, but we're really concerned with getting those Psychic Energies accelerated to Trevenant Dusknoir. So this is the list I found for Green's Trevenant Dusknoir. I don't think it's very good, and the reason I say that is because Green's Reshizard has Welder going for it. If you don't get to use that Volcanion on turn 1 going second, you can just, you know, Welder. If those energies get removed, the attack on Cresselia and Volcanion, they only work 1 time for the full effect, so you can just use Welder in the later games, or later turns, I'm sorry. But with this deck, you don't have that option. You don't have that secondary acceleration. So I'm really not that optimistic about this variant, and I think there's just much better ways to be playing a Trevenant Dusknoir deck in the upcoming standard format. Next, we have Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX variants. Now, Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX is one of the main cards of this set. Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX is a water-type VMAX with 320 HP. Do note that it is weak to metal, so I do think that the potential of Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX may be stifled a bit by Luke Metal and ADP sticking around until rotation, since they are prime partners for Zacian and Zamazenta. That being said, I do think this card's very good. It has the Emperor's Ride attack for colorless, which does 10 plus 30 more damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So this deck could, in theory, run a Weakness Guard energy or 2, because Emperor's Ride can attack for any energy plus a water, or really any 2 energy, to do a max of 160 damage if your opponent has a full bench. Max Lance is the main attack on Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. For Water, it does 10 plus. You may discard up to 2 energy from this Pokemon. If you do, this attack does 120 more damage for each energy discarded this way. So you can do a maximum of 250 damage with Max Lance. Melanie is a brand new supporter card that's coming out, or came out in Chilling Reign. Attach a basic water energy from your discard to one of your V Pokemon. And if you did, draw 3 cards, kind of like a Welder. And then Froslass, upon evolution, you get to attach a basic water from discard to any of your Pokemon. So these 2 cards, either together or separate, can help you accelerate energy to Calyrex VMAX to be able to use Max Lance turn after turn after turn. This first variant here we're looking at is Ice Rider Cali with Inteleon. Of course, the same Sobble, Drizzle, Inteleon, and other Inteleon line that we've looked at, and we will be looking at in a lot of decks, since this is a very strong line of Pokemon. The Sobble can search out itself and other Rapid Strikes, the Drizzle searches for a trainer, the Sword and Shield Inteleon searches for 2 trainers, and the new Inteleon adds damage to the board to help supplement Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX's damage, or whatever other Pokemon you're pairing it with's damage. So I think the Drizzle / Inteleon line is quite good for this, because you can search out your Melanie if you need it, or if you already have a Melanie, you could search out Quick Ball to get the water energy into the discard pile. Path to the Peak is being used in this list, since this deck only has one rule box ability to use, and it's the Dedenne GX. You're probably better off not putting down the Dedenne unless you absolutely need it. So Path to the Peak seems pretty great. You could search that out with your Drizzle as well. And I believe I might have said search out your Cheryl to accelerate energy, but I definitely meant Melanie. So yeah, this is the first Ice Rider deck we're looking at. I think its potential is fairly high. Its weakness is definitely Luke Metal and the ADP being around to make Zacian a force to be reckoned with. But outside of that, I think it has pretty high potential. It might sit around tier 2 just because of the Zacian decks, but I expect if Zacian is not as prominent without its main partners in post-rotation, that Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX will potentially bump up to tier 1. Next, we have Ice Rider with Inteleon and Froslass. This list is not too much different. I just wanted to show a list using Froslass, which upon evolution attaches a water energy, so you don't always have to be using Melanie as your water acceleration. It also uses one of the older Froslasses for 1 water energy. It does 20 times the amount of damage you put onto Froslass, up to 7, so it can do 140 for 1 energy and clean up something. It's a nice little single prize attacker to have in the deck. Next is Ice Rider Victini VMAX, and this is a deck I found on Ho-Ho News, and I'm trying to show you guys every deck I can find from Chilling Reign. Low potential. I encourage you to scan this deck list on the screen and look for a boss's orders, and it is not there. So that was a Victini VMAX deck without boss's orders. I see the synergy here. They're trying to play 2 very aggressive VMAXs that hit for a fair amount of damage for 2 energy. Victini VMAX can use a water and a fire, so that means that it can use Melanie to accelerate energy to it, but just no boss's orders to pair with the aggression that you have from attaching a water or a fire to Ice Rider or Victini seems pretty bad. And you could say, well, why don't we just slap in some boss's orders to the deck? Well, I think the deck is just too much going on. I don't think this will be very good. Someone prove me wrong, as I always say. I'll be happy to be proven wrong, but this deck kind of looks like a mess. So if you were thinking about building Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, like all these decks, here's your baseline list to use, but this is probably one of the ones in this video I would encourage you not to build. Next, we have Ice Rider ADPZ. Again, I don't think there's a reason to do this. Play ADPZ or play Ice Rider Calyrex. Personally, I think this just makes ADPZ a clunky deck. You can't Melanie to ADP, and you can't Melanie to Zacian for any real effect other than Melanie to it to then energy switch it to ADP, but you could already do that with Metal Saucer. Speaking of, they're only playing 3 Metal Saucer in this list, so I personally think this is a mess. Maybe, again, prove me wrong. I think it has low potential, though. And then lastly, we have Ice Rider with Cinccino, and my bad, I titled this one Ice Rider Victini VMAX Part 2, apparently. But Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX with Cinccino. It's kind of like the Inteleon build, except you're having a stage 1 line for your draw support, as opposed to a stage 1 and 2 line for search support and a little bit of extra damage. But that means you get to fit in some other cute stuff like extra Pokemon search and extra Path to the Peak. Togekiss, which for 1 energy does 90 if the active is an evolved Pokemon. Then it also has Hoopa with a 1 energy attack, so trying to clean up knockouts in the same way that we saw Froslass trying to clean up knockouts in the earlier list. But yeah, sorry guys about that title that I messed up on. I think this one has high potential if the Inteleon one has high potential. I think it's just 2 different engines trying to do the same thing. This doesn't have the stage 2 Inteleon buffing up your damage a little bit, but again, that's a stage 2 Pokemon, and games are ending fast in these 3 prize focused formats, so it's a question of how much value will you even get out of having those stage 2s on the board. This one also has Leon, which can buff up your damage a little bit since you don't have the Inteleon to do that. Next we have Metagross VMAX. Metagross VMAX is a Rapid Strike Metal VMAX Pokemon with 2 attacks. The first one, Magnetic Adhesion for a Metal Energy. Search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. The second attack, Max Rush for Metal Colorless, does 100, and during your next turn, this Pokemon's Max Rush attack does 150 more damage. That being said, I don't think this card is good. The only way I think this card could be, you know, a good card that you want to play over everything else in the format is if you're using it strictly for the magnetic adhesion attack to just search your deck for up to 2 cards, and you play it as a control deck of some sort. Max Rush seems very weak because your opponent could just use Escape Rope or Fione or Boss's Orders, or maybe 250 damage next turn just isn't worth only hitting for 100 on the previous turn. So let's look at the deck list. So we have a Metagross VMAX deck here from Ho-Ho News. It's a little glary, but I think you can make out what's in the deck. We've got Galarian Rapidash going on, which you can Metal Saucer to a Metal Pokemon, then Bronzong it over to Galarian Rapidash and attach for turn to Galarian Rapidash and put one of your opponent's Pokemon down to 100 HP. So then Metagross can knock it out with its second attack without the buff. But you could use like 90% of other V Pokemon to just knock out Pokemon and do more damage at 100. So I'm not really seeing the appeal here that you set it down to 100 just so Metagross VMAX can knock it out without the buff on its attack. It kind of feels like a deck that you'd build if you really love Metagross, or you think the card looks cool, or you pulled a 3/3 line of it, so why the heck not? Let's try to have fun at League with it. But I don't see this actually like doing anything competitively. Rapid Strike box. So this is kind of an overarching deck type that will be built upon as more and more and more Rapid Strike cards come out. With just battle styles, we weren't really able to do this effectively. We had Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, which of course is an all-star card. We had Empoleon V, which saw very little play, and we had things like the Phalanx Rapid Strike, but playing Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX is just better. We didn't have enough tools to really make a box-style deck that would effectively work in a competitive setting. But now, with Chilling Reign coming out, and then the next set, Evolving Skies, the Rapid Strike box is becoming more and more a reality with each set that comes out. So I built this list on Pokegear.app. Shout out to Jake Gearhart for making that website. Since you know, I can use some Japanese scans, just pop them on into this deck list maker and make a deck list for you all. So this is what I envision Rapid Strike box roughly looking like with Chilling Reign out. We've got a 2/2 line of Urshifu VMAX, a 2/2 line of Blaziken VMAX, 2 Zaraora V, and then a 3/3/1/1 split of the Inteleons. The Sobble Rapid Strike can search out all of your basic Rapid Strike Pokemon. Then we got the Drizzle, the Search Trainers, the Inteleon, the Search Trainers, and the other Inteleon to buff up damage by pinging things for 2 each turn. The Passimian makes your Rapid Strike Pokemon's bench damage do 30 extra to V and GX Pokemon on your opponent's bench. And then we have the Telescopic Sight combo to make that an extra 60 damage to bench Pokemon when pairing it with Passimian. And this list is running Tapu Koko Prism to accelerate lightning energy, which can work for any of our attackers, really. It can work for Zaraora, it can work for Blaziken since it takes colorless, and it can work for Urshifu VMAX since Urshifu VMAX just needs fighting colorless for Gmax Rapid Flow, so it can use a lightning and a Rapid Strike energy. Now this is a very early draft of the deck, but the whole point of this video is to give you guys a good place to start for any of these archetypes that you want to try building. And this is one that I'm excited about, and like I said, I think it will keep growing with each set of battle style rapid and single strike support that we get. So I'm excited to see where this goes. For now, I think it's mid potential, but in Evolving Skies, when Sylveon GX comes out and this gains another attacker with another utility and also a psychic type attacker, this could get even better. Next, we've got Rapid Strike Malamar. Now, I don't know what to make of this. Is this a massive meme or is it actually good? The first time I saw results in Japan with people doing well with this deck, I thought it was just a one-time fluke or a meme kind of thing, but then I saw even more and more and more results with people playing Rapid Strike Malamar, and people from North America, you know, outside of Japan, talking about Rapid Strike Malamar, and I thought, is there something I'm missing? No, this card just doesn't make sense to me, but it might be good. It might be good, so let's read it. Rapid Tentacles for a Psychic Energy. Reveal any number of Rapid Strike cards in your hand. This attack does 40 damage for each card revealed in this way. Then shuffle those cards back into your deck. That last part is what gets me. Then shuffle those cards back into your deck. So let's say you reveal 7 Rapid Strike cards from your hand. Now that's a lot to ask. You need to have 7 cards in your hand at the end of the turn that you don't need to use any of. They have to all be Rapid Strike, and then you'll do 280. You know, if you have, maybe let's say 5 might be a little bit more of a doable number, but that means you have to have at least 5 cards in your hand. 5 of those cards have to be Rapid Strike. You have to not need to use any of those cards to get this attack off, and then they all get shuffled into your deck to do 200 damage. Can you do this enough turns in a game to win? That's the question. And can this deck be consistent enough to do that enough turns in a game to win? So let's look at a list from Japan. This is Rapid Strike Malamar. This won some kind of tournament. Now, when these decks win tournaments and get posted on hohonews.com, some of the tournaments are like, you know, 10 to 20 people. So they're, imagine like League Challenge, Small League Cup type things. But it means the deck can at least function in some sort or some environment. But looking at this deck list, it honestly looks very functional and very solid. A 4/4 land, the main attacker. The 3/3 Octillery, although you can only use one of those a turn, Octillery is a Rapid Strike card, as is Remoraid. So you can use those for the effect of the attack to shuffle it back in. And then you've got the 3/3 Cinccino to draw more cards, since Octillery is just searching you one a turn. Then it has the double Oricorio GX to make sure if something is knocked out, you get to draw 3 up at the end of the beginning of your next turn or some point in your next turn. Then also Lucky Egg, so when your active's knocked out, you get to draw up to 7, since you just probably shuffled many cards into your deck for the effect of Malamar's attack. I do think this could use a few more Rapid Strike cards in it, maybe just bump that up a little bit. But the deck list looks solid. It looks consistent, to be honest. I'll just have to see when I get my hands on this deck, when Chilling Reign comes out on PTCGO, can it work consistently? Can it stand up to the big dogs? Right now, I'm not hopeful for it. I'm putting it in low potential, but I think maybe something's there. We'll have to see. A lot of these non-rule box decks come out and people think they're going to be the next big thing, and then they flop because they're not consistent. So right now I'm looking at it with a little bit of pessimism, saying low potential, but we'll mark that up a little bit and give it mid potential later in Chilling Reign if it turns out to perform. Next is Rapid Strike Urshifu Inteleon. Now, most of this deck is not new, and I debated putting it in this video, but Rapid Strike Urshifu Inteleon was such a high performer in Taiwan tournaments and Japanese tournaments when it came out that I felt like I should include it, since it's a new version of Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, and the Inteleon from Chilling Reign is a large part of that. It has the ability Rapid Shooter. Once during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, if this card didn't have a great basic and stage 1 and another stage 2 to play beside it, I don't know if it would be seeing play. But because the Sobble can search out Rapid Strikes, the Drizzle can search out a trainer, and the other Inteleon searches out 2 trainers upon evolution, I think that's why all the cards aligned and this Inteleon is seeing play. So this is what the deck list pretty much looks like. A lot of the decks looked like this for Urshifu Inteleon. It plays a very thick line, 4 Sobble, 4 Drizzle, and then one of the old Inteleon that searches 2 trainers and 3 of the new ones, so you can try to get a maximum of 60 damage where you want at a turn with those abilities. Also playing the Passimian to buff up your Rapid Strike bench damage. So this is all about taking multiple knockouts and setting up damage for later. It looks like a really, really fun deck. And I think this deck's viability will depend on how many people are playing Mew in the format. And also, can they rush down your Drizzles before they become Inteleons? Because Mew can prove to not even be that much of an issue if you can just set up 2 Inteleons and take it down in 2 turns with the abilities. So I think this deck has high potential. It's replacing the Chinchino line of drawing with the Drizzles and the Sword and Shield Inteleon of searching cards out. I think it's pretty good. I have high hopes for this one. It looks like a blast to play. So yeah, high potential for Urshifu Inteleon. Next, we have Sandaconda VMAX, another new VMAX from Chilling Reign. Sandaconda has 320 HP. It's a fighting type VMAX, which is weak to grass. So that's nice because it's not weak to psychic like our other popular fighting type VMAX Urshifus are. Sand Pulse for 1 fighting energy does 60 damage. And this attack does 20 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So with the Telescopic Sight, this could do 50 to all of your opponent's benched Pokemon if they are Vs and GXs. The nice thing about Sand Impulse doing 60 for fighting and then spreading damage is you could try to just chain Cheryl's in this deck and Cheryl any damage it gets hit with, and then attach an energy, Sand Impulse again, Cheryl, attach an energy, Sand Impulse again. And then Gmax Cyclone for fighting colorless does 180 damage and move any number of energy from your Pokemon to your other Pokemon in any way you like. So that's a pretty decent attack. It'll 2-shot VMAXs and you can move energy to a fresh Sandaconda if this one's about to get knocked out. So this is a Sandaconda VMAX list that I came across. Disappointingly, it does not play any Cheryl, but other than that, it looks very solid, playing a 4-3 line of Sandaconda VMAX, and then, of course, that popular Sobble, Drizzle, and Inteleon line to spread damage and search out trainers. It does have a lot of healing with 3 Malolana, just not that Cheryl package that I was envisioning, but perhaps the Malolanas do enough work, especially with the stone energies, reducing damage being done to your Sandaconda. So this, again, looks like a very fun deck, but I think it's just overcasted by Urshifu Inteleon. So I have rated this as low potential, but it looks like Sandaconda VMAX will be a fun card to mess around with. Next is Single Strike Urshifu Chilling Reign, so the non-rule box Single Strike Urshifu. Now, I'm going out on a limb here with this one. I think it has some potential. Enough potential to be listed on this video, maybe. And I made the deck list for it, so it has no prior results, no proof that it's good. I just think this card's interesting, and it might find a little bit of a niche in the meta. So for its second attack, for Dark Colorless, it has Carnage Knuckle, 100 damage, plus if this Pokemon has any damage counters on it, this attack does 100 more damage. The Carnage Knuckle does 200 after you use Houndoom's ability to accelerate a Single Strike energy to it. With 2 Single Strike energies, it does 220. If you use a Karen's Conviction after your opponent took 3 prizes, it does 300. It could actually do a lot of damage for a little guy. Note that Urshifu does have to evolve. It evolves from Cubfu. But I think this could be decent, especially since single Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX and Trevenant Dusknoir, which I believe will be popular attackers in this upcoming meta, are weak to dark. And then you have Single Strike Urshifu V as a fighting type attacker in the deck that can take care of fighting weak Pokemon, like the Pikaroms and Raichus and Boltons, which I'm sure will stick around for yet another meta. And then the Seviper, which for 3 energy does 180 if you played a Single Strike supporter this turn. And we are playing 4 Bruno, a Karen, and a Welcoming Lantern to get either of those back in this list. This is just a rough draft. I haven't tested this at all. I'm waiting until Chilling Reigns on PTCGO to start my testing. But at a glance, this looks like it would at least function and possibly even take some good matchups in the upcoming standard format metagame. So this is a deck I'm excited to mess around with a little bit. For now, I think it has low potential, but we'll see what it can do. I think that Single Strike Urshifu can just do a lot of damage for a non-rule box Pokemon. Knockout Vs, knockout VMAXs that are weak to it. Even really get up to those high numbers between Single Strike Energy and Karen's Conviction. So let me know what you think about this one. Next, we have Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, the big dog of Chilling Reign. Well, really, it's a deer with a plant on its head riding a ghost horse. But Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, 320 HP, Psychic type VMAX Pokemon, weak to dark, resistant to fighting. Resistance to fighting is pretty good. The ability is Underworld Door. Once during your turn, you may attach a Psychic Energy from your hand to one of your benched Psychic Pokemon. But wait, don't stop there. You also get to draw 2 cards. So not only is this going to accelerate energy for you, it's drawing cards. And then Max Geist for 3 colorless does 10 plus 30 more damage for each Psychic Energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So if you have 7 Psychic Energy on the board, that means you're using Underworld Door for a couple of turns on multiple Shadow Riders. You'll do 220, which is pretty decent. I see a lot of Zacian V in this card. It's accelerating energy to itself and to others. It's drawing you cards. Its attack is a little bit less good than Zacian V's, I'll give it that, but it has more HP, and you can use multiple Underworld Doors a turn if you set up multiple Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAXs. So I see a lot of Zacian V attributes and potential in this card. I think it's a home run. And also coming out in this set is some support for Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, which is Fog Crystal. Search your deck for a Psychic Energy or a basic Psychic Pokemon and put it into your hand. So kind of like Netball, but for Psychic Pokemon. The first Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX variant we have here is kind of what I think the plain variant will look like. This is kind of like the bread and butter kind of list. Maybe throw in a Chaotic Swell somewhere, and then there you have it. This is kind of the standard list for it. Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX is not really going to be the main attacker, but in the late game, once you've gotten a lot of Psychic Energy down, it can be the main attacker, or pretty much at any point you could probably clean up something that's already damaged with Max Geist. But Trevenant Dusknoir has the Night Watch attack, Gengar Mimikyu has Horror House plus Poltergeist, and Mewtwo and Mew has its Perfection attack, which, that's not right. It has its Miraculous Duo GX attack, which can heal everything, and the Perfection ability, which can copy Gengar Mimikyu and Trevenant Dusknoir. I got there. It also plays the Galarian Zapdos V, which is a great new card from this set. It has the ability that allows you to attack for 1 colorless less for each of your opponent's V Pokemon. And the attack for fighting and 3 colorless does 170 and discards special energy attached to the defending. So against Tornadus VMAX, which, if you hadn't noticed, hits Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX for weakness, Galarian Zapdos V will one-shot Eternatus VMAX for just an Aurora energy, as long as they have like an Eternatus and 2 Crobats on the board, which is not much to ask for against that deck. So this is kind of like the standard baseline for Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, in my opinion. The deck has crazy potential. Next, we have Shadow Rider Gardevoir. Now, let's get a few things out of the way. Do I think this looks cool? Yes. Do I think it will be fun to play? Yes. Is it without a doubt going to make it into a YouTube video and or Twitch stream of mine? Absolutely, because I want to play with some stage 2s, gosh darn it. Is it better than just playing a regular Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX deck? I can't imagine so. So I have rated it with low potential, but on the cool factor, it's very high, because Gardevoir kind of has like a mini Intrepid Sword ability. It's a stage 2, but the Gardevoir has the ability that allows you to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, attach any basic energy you find there to any of your Pokemon, and then draw the rest of the cards. So if you see 2 cards that aren't energy, you can draw them. If you see 2 cards that are energy and you want to draw them just so you can Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX them down and draw 2 more cards for each of those energies, you can do that too. The Gallade new from Chilling Reign for 2 colorless does 60 for each V Pokemon your opponent has on the board. Kind of works a little bit like Galarian Zapdos V does. In that way, that it'll be a good counter to Tornadus VMAX. So this looks cool, but I can't imagine it fitting a very thick stage 2 line and 4 rare candies into your deck is better than just playing the big beefy basics that the other list plays. Next we have Shadow Rider with energy removal. Why? I don't have an answer why. But I think Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX is strong enough that this honestly wouldn't even be the worst thing to play. Also note that Leon towards the bottom of the picture is not in the deck. As far as I can tell, it is a gym promo for placing or playing or winning. But let's think about it like this. Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, if you're accelerating energy each turn and using Max Geist, eventually you're going to be two-shotting things. Maybe in the late game, even one-shotting things. So if you just disrupt your opponent with Crushing Hammers and Rugged Helmet and Clefable and Giratina and Team Yellgrunt and Scoop Up Net to reuse some of those for previously mentioned Pokemon, you might just be fine attaching energies to Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAXs and using Max Geist until you clear your opponent's board with your moderate to late game high damage output because you're just removing energy. This is kind of in the same vein as why do this when you could just do the regular Shadow Rider deck. If you think this is cool, go for it. If you think it's fun, go for it. I don't think it's going to ever touch regular Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, but I do think it's better than throwing a 4-2-6 plus 4 rare candy stage 2 line in like the Gardevoir variant did. So if you want to play a unique Shadow Rider build, but one that's a little more competitive, I can see maybe this would have a better shot at doing things than the Gardevoir one did, but they're both kind of weird. So let's move on. Shadow Rider Alcremie VMAX. This one is from Andrew Mahone, also known as Tricky Jim, also known as on Twitter as @EnjoyFriend. I think this one has mid potential, probably more than that last energy removal one did. Alcremie VMAX does 60 damage for each energy you discard from the board on any of your Pokemon, so you can just Underworld Door all day long to whatever Pokemon you want, and as long as 2 of those energies are on Alcremie VMAX, you can use Gmax Whisk to do 60 times the amount of energy you discard and just start popping anything that stands in your way. Andrew has gameplay of this deck over on his YouTube channel, Tricky Jim, so if you want to check that out, you haven't already, make sure you do that. If you're interested in Alcremie VMAX and Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX combining into one big cake deck, I do think this is pretty good, but I don't think it's the best Calyrex VMAX variant. And last we have Shadow Rider Path to the Peak, which at first glance may sound counterproductive, but at second glance it may sound like Garbodor 2.0. I don't super love this list, but this is one of the ones I saw from Japan, and the Greens Exploration is actually kind of cool because once you play Path to the Peak down, your Shadow Riders do not have abilities anymore, and you could actually play greens, which is pretty nice. So you Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, use that ability to power up Trevenant Dusknoir. Then after you've done your abilities and drawn your cards, you play Marnie and play Path to the Peak, and then you use Trevenant Dusknoir's Night Watch to do 150 and shuffle 2 cards from your opponent's hand into their deck. So you've just Marnied them or reset stamped them, played Path to the Peak, so they're Dedennes, they're Crobats, they're Eldegoss, their own Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, everything, all the abilities are turned off, and then you shuffle 2 of their 4 cards from their hand back into their deck at random, and you do 150 damage to them. So if you just get this lock to stick for a couple of turns, Trevenant Dusknoir is just going to run through their board by the time they get anything going. So I think this deck has a lot of potential. And next, and I believe last, we have Tornadus VMAX, the Single Strike VMAX, colorless. with 2 attacks. Blast Wind does 60 for 2 energy, and Max Fujin for 4 colorless does 120 plus 120 more if there's a stadium card in play and discard that stadium. So it does 240. Let's slap on a couple single strike energies. Now we're doing 280. Let's play a Karen's Conviction after your opponent took 3 prize cards. Now we're doing 340 all of a sudden. That one-shots an Tornadus VMAX. That sounds pretty cool. But there's better ways to one-shot a Tornadus VMAX. Galarian Zapdos. Single Strike Urshifu V or VMAX. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX with a Martial Arts Dojo in play. You know, I think there's better ways to be doing all that damage. But this does all that damage to everything, not just Tornadus VMAX, whereas those fighting types that I mentioned only do it to Tornadus VMAX. So, is this good? I think it could be okay, but right now I'm going to be pessimistic about it. So here's a Tornadus VMAX list. It's basically built just like a single strike Urshifu VMAX list would be built. Something to note is it's weak to lightning and resistant to fighting. And over in Japan, Tapu Koko Prism is not in their standard format, and Pikarom seems to be absolutely non-existent. So that lightning weakness doesn't really matter to Tornadus over there, where over here, we're probably going to have Pikarom survive another metagame if history has shown us anything. So I don't think this one has a lot of immediate potential, but it loses like nothing from the deck in rotation except triple colorless energy. But you have the Houndooms to accelerate energy, so that's probably okay. I think this deck is not bad. It probably functions quite fine. I just don't know if everything you're trying to do is worth it when you have to set up a stage 1 to support your VMAX, and then you have to get 4 energy onto it, and you might still not be one-shotting anything, and it's a very setup reliant deck with the Houndooms and then shuffling back in your single strike energies once they're discarded. Sometimes using Karen's Conviction as your supporter for turn to supplement the damage, while also being weak to lightning, which has been a bad thing to be weak to for quite some time in our standard format. So we'll have to see how that goes. Maybe if Pikarom is completely gone, this could have a little bit more potential, but for right now I'm going to say low potential. I wouldn't go, you know, buy a full playset of Tornadus VMAX if they're still at high price because we're in pre-release days. Maybe wait a little while to build this deck. And there you have it. That's all of the new decks from Chilling Reign, at least all the ones I could find or put together myself. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please be sure to do so for daily Pokemon TCG content, and leave a like on the video so more people can see this. It really does help get this video into more people's home pages and suggested videos and things like that. If you need PTCGO codes, especially come June 17th, when Chilling Reign is available a day early on PTCGO, be sure to check out PotownStore.com and use code Celio for 5% off to support the channel and save money. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.